And welcome to another live and virtual Fraud Watch Q&A session. And we especially appreciate you joining us on this first official Juneteenth federal holiday. Today, you're getting a 2-for-1 benefit. We're joined by two of AARP's most experienced Fraud Watch leads, Jean Mathisen from Whidbey Island and Kay Tomlinson in Lake Taves. Our cybercrime prevention lead, Dave Morrow, is not able to join us today, but we expect him back for our July 16th Q&A session. My name's Ann O'Callahan, coming to you from Issaquah, and I'm delighted to be your host during today's session. This is your show. You ask the questions and our panel tackles them. We're excited to answer them, whether you want to know about how to protect yourself from your digital identity scams, how to handle online phishing, robocalls, romance scams, IRS scams, whatever. Jean and Kay can also share tips on how to keep your password strong, how to keep your bank and credit card information safe. So please bring those questions on. To ask a question live on air, please type your name in the chat box or click on the raise hand button on Zoom. I'll call on you to ask your questions as they come in. If you prefer that I read your question for you to our panelists, just type your entire question into the chat box and I'll read it out for their answer. If you're joining us via Facebook, you can type in your question and that we'll see it there. Now, let's get started. There's a question that I have for Jean and Kay while you guys are kind of thinking about what you want to ask. So guys, there have been several news stories lately concerning COVID scams, whether it's vaccine lottery, vaccine cards, online shopping. What's this all about and how do these scams occur?
Well, thanks for the question, Ann. One thing that I think about COVID scams is that it really encapsulates what we see over the years with scams. Oftentimes, scammers follow the headlines. Whenever there's a natural disaster, and for sure this health emergency is a disaster, you'll see that there are scammers ever ready to jump in. Also, they are performing imposter fraud. They will pretend to be someone else. They'll pretend that they're calling from the health department or whatever. So I would really like to talk about, these scams right now that are related to the vaccine cards in particular. So we are seeing that a number of people are on social media and they are showing their cards, showing that they got a shot. They're excited. We feel as if, oh God, a weight's being lifted and we're going to be able to get back into society. But the problem is, what is the information on the card? It's one thing to announce that you have had a shot. It's another to show your card, which shows your date of birth and your name and where did you get your shot, which shot did you get and what was the date. So people can piece together information and that leads to identity theft. So let's say I'm showing that card on social media. I could very well expect then I might get a call from someone telling me that he or she is with the health department. I might get an email, I might get a text, and they're going to say, well, we're just checking to see, did everything go okay? Please complete this survey, those kinds of things. And that is what leads to identity theft. And we understand from the Federal Trade Commission, because of COVID, Federal Trade Commission reports identity theft cases were up almost 3,000% in 2020 compared to what they were in 2019. And of course, one of the big problems too has been we're all shopping online. And as you mentioned, Ann, online shopping has been a big problem related to COVID as well. And Kay, I know that you've had some experience with these cases, so tell us what you think about it.
Well, I think, that's all fantastic information, and we just mainly have to think about being cautious. Another Facebook scam that we see a lot are actually an increasing market for fake vaccine cards, not just people showing theirs because, of course, we're so proud that we have them, but the ability to, if you don't want to get a vaccine, but you need a card, for a small fee of and your personal information, you can get a card. So you can't get a card that's valid unless you get a vaccine. So obviously a scam. And I really want to reiterate what you started out with, Jean, because I think it's really important for people to be aware that the fraudsters and the scammers, um, don't think about some high school kid sitting in the garage with their computer thinking of a way to make money. These are sophisticated, highly technologically capable people. And so they watch the news just like we watch the news. And so these scams are going to continue to evolve. The health department, the government, the state, the county, they're never going to ask you for that personal information like social security, bank account, any of that. So we just have to really be cautious and stay on our toes. Listen to that little feeling inside.
That's for sure. And I think sometimes with COVID particularly, people are confused. There's uncertainty. Are we going to get another stimulus payment? We don't know who's going to get it. And so people can call us with information, they sound legit. And so we take them at their word because we are not coming from a place where we are always thinking of scamming people.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, we need to think now about protection and what we can do to stay safe. And so, when I think about all the kinds of scams that have mushroomed in these days of COVID, for example, who would have thought puppy scams? You know, Things like, oh, dogs now are so hard to get that there are these phony breeders who say, well, I'll get a puppy to you and it's going to cost this much money. This person is not a breeder. We don't even know where he or she is. And you'll just send money, because now they're at the airport and now they need to get through some sort of handling. And so it goes on and on. And I would just like to give a little bit of a shout out too about if you're trying to figure out where can you go to get legitimate information about COVID,
Mm,
please consider the Washington's coronavirus hotline. And
mm,
we are going to be distributing information after the program today that will include a lot of resources, places where you can go to get more information.
mm.
And that coronavirus hotline, you can access it online at coronavirus.wa.gov. They've also got a 7-day-a-week telephone number. So I hope that
Mm.
people will please think about that if there's some information that you need. And, it's just hard to imagine all of the different kinds of things that are being touted right now with coronavirus. I think, don't fall for pop-up ads, social media ads, that sort of thing. It really will get you in trouble.
Yep.
Well, thank you guys. That gave us a really thorough answer to that question. We appreciate it. Let's see. And in relation to that, in our chat box, please notice that coronavirus.wa.gov, that website is actually in the chat box if you want to copy it. And now we have a question from Julie. She says, it seems that when I search for information in my browser, my email inbox is swamped with information or references on the same topic, or I'm inundated with pop-up ads that are related. What can I do about this?
That's a really good, irritating question, isn't it? Oh, that's so irritating because I always figure that, imagine you're shopping for Father's Day or birthday present and you're doing some research online. And now every time your family member that uses the device goes online, all of these ads pop up trying to sell you similar things. They know what you want to buy. And it's true. The websites keep track of your browsing. All websites do this, especially shopping websites because they're looking to market to you. And you can certainly Google, how do I make that stop? How do I block this? But there are some steps that you can take to stop, or at the very least, very much limit that online tracking that is happening when you're browsing through the internet. And if there's some settings that you can do, and like I said, you can Google this to get these specific steps for your particular, if you have an iMac or a Windows 10, whatever your browser are. If you're like in Firefox or Chrome, I'm a Windows 10 user, just open your browser and go to settings. And there's going to be a section either along the top or on the side for privacy or security. Just click on that and it's going to give you probably a whole page of options that you can do. And then search for something that says send do not track request with browsing traffic. Click on that. And anytime you go to a website that's going to, that you want to do some research or shopping or whatever, then you can tell your browser will tell that website, don't track my action on your website. You can also, in that same section on your computer, go ahead and block tracking cookies, which is essentially the same thing. So, take those steps, go in and Google that. There are certain websites and browsers that will automatically block that tracking. It depends on what you do. You can do some Google searches for that, but there is a way to block that traffic. You can go into your control panel regardless of your system, and also periodically delete your cookies, block pop-ups, that kind of thing as well. But that tracking is really irritating, and you can take steps to do that.
Mhm.
Thank you.
And I noticed that a couple of folks, and you've probably noticed, well, have put some suggestions in the
Good.
chat box, so people can check those out as well. One of the things, it's going to sound probably by the end of this as if I'm in the Federal Trade Commission's fan club, and in a way I am, but they track all kinds of scams, and that's part of my work with AARP is fraud prevention. And I noticed that the Consumer Sentinel, which is a fabulous, fabulous publication that they issue every year, it tells us all the different kinds of scams and how were people contacted. And in fact, they even have one specific for Washington State. But one of the things I found really interesting with this last issue that they put out was that of all of the kinds of scams that led to fraud, like where somebody filed a report, how was I contacted? When people said, I went through a pop-up ad or it was something that I found online, 70% of the people who reported following those pop-up ads complained about fraud, which I think is a huge percentage. The second and third had to do with online and emails. So let's be really cautious whenever we're, this is sort of our focus today too, right? Is how to stay safe online. I notice one of the types of pop-up ads that seems to be the most treacherous has to do with security online. You'll get some sort of a pop-up that say there's a problem with your computer. It's no longer safe. And we've heard so much in recent weeks, about ransomware and that sort of thing. Well, individual people can get those kinds of warnings too. And if you click on a link or you call the number, it's going to redirect you somewhere, and somebody is going to get your information and may, in fact, take over your computer. You really want to be cautious. You don't want anyone to ever be allowed to assume control of your computer. The security alerts that tell you you need tech support. I always say to folks, Microsoft will not contact you if there is a problem with your computer. You are going to need to track them down. You're going to need to go to the Geek Squad or someone. It's not going to happen through some sort of a general warning. So really do be cautious of those things.
Right.
And follow the steps that Ann said and some of our friends who are online today. We just need to say we are cautious about suggesting specific programs and policies, just because we haven't checked everybody out specifically. So do be cautious too when you're looking at what you can do to stay safe online. It's really important to us. After all, that's our reason for being. And I just want to share this one more thing, and I hope you'll be patient with me about this. This was such a revelation to me. So here in Washington State, our AARP director used to work for the Attorney General's office, and he worked as a fraud investigator. And I'll tell you, it has been such a gift to those of us who are working to keep everyone safe. And at a recent training, he shared with us a video of a fellow who was hacking hackers. And so somebody had tried to get into his computer to hack him, and he was really savvy, far beyond what I could ever do. And he hacked the hacker. And so when we were in this training, this fellow opened up his he shared his screen, and we were looking at a boiler room operation filled with people who are contacting people across the globe complaining there's a problem with your computer, something needs to happen. And not only were they hacking the people's computer, in many cases, they had turned on their cameras unbeknownst to the victims. So someone is looking into their living room, looking into their bedroom, wherever their computer may be. So I just really want to give a little extra caution there. Please, keep your camera covered up if you're not using it. Not on today, of course, because we all want to see you, but to just really be cautious in every way. My husband tells me I'm like the Murphy's Law Irish, whatever can go wrong will. And that's kind of true. I am kind of like that, but I think better safe than sorry.
Well, thank you both. And we actually have a somewhat related question from Ted. Can you advise about Facebook privacy settings and separating the important ones from the less important ones?
Ted, I would advise that not just Facebook, but any social media. Think about LinkedIn, think about Facebook, any of them. Only give the bare bones necessity that you need to give to have the access that you want. Cell phone number, they don't need to have that. Your name or your screen name, pick a screen name. You don't need to have your real name if you don't want. And they're different for each piece of social media. What we need to really understand is just because a website asks doesn't mean that we have to give. You'll usually see the little asterisk by the fields that say, hey, this won't work unless you fill this out. Well, if it says they have to have a cell phone number, they don't need my cell phone number. They can have 253-123-4567. And I really don't think their software knows the difference. But keep in mind that there is a process called scraping. And this is done across social media websites to gather all that information that you put out there, whether it's Facebook, LinkedIn, anybody else like that. And companies will scrape this information and they'll use it to compile information on you, compilate it, and then market products, services, goods to you. Well, okay, you don't want them to necessarily have all of your information, but keep in mind that fraudsters also go through this scraping process and they compile this information on you as, again, a means to attempt to steal your identity. So again, just because a website asks doesn't mean you need to give them all the information or maybe all the correct information about you personally. Jean, what do you think?
Oh, I think that's absolutely true. And I remember it wasn't so long ago that LinkedIn, for example, had a contest, and the people who could have the most friends or the most people that they communicated with via that platform could qualify for some sort of I don't know what, a medal on screen or something. I don't know. I mean, when it wasn't much value. But the problem is all these people who want to be your friends are not real friends. And so, one of the things that we suggest is really, be cautious about who you share your information with and make sure that you're not maybe allowing your ego to be fed by having more friends. If these are people you don't know very well or you wouldn't share your information with them in real life, I think I would just leave them on the curb and not go on to Facebook with them. Yeah, I know there's so much oversharing, and I think especially this past year, right? It was the only outlet for a lot of people.
Right.
And it kind of, I think there's a price to be paid now. And one of the things that I think about some of the social media sites too is that, again, back to those surveys, so they'll ask you like, well, when and where did you go to high school and what's your nickname and what's your favorite dog and all of that. This is not just an exercise for you so that you can feel good and know things about your friends. These surveys, as Kay's indicating, this information is gathered, it is sold, it is compilated, and somebody is going to monetize what you put in there when you think you are just innocently responding to a survey. So I would just suggest let it go.
Yep.
Yeah.
One last thing, leaping onto your comment, Jean, is that everyone's so eager to get out now, and and you kind of mentioned this, and they may say, "Oh, I can't wait to get together with my family next week in Chicago."
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
guess what? Empty house, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So that's also something to think about.
Right.
Thank you
Yeah.
again for that very thorough answer to that question. So Robert asks, I get so many robocalls from early in the day until late at night. What's the best
Mm.
way to respond? Should I block each one? A friend recommended the do not call registry, but that hasn't helped a bit. So please tell me, what should I do?
Okay. Yeah. Jean, go for it.
Okay, well, Robert, there are something like 2 billion with a B robocalls that are made every month, and the majority of them are scams. Sometimes it's a legitimate business trying to, bump up their customer service or whatever. But what we recommend, just as a matter of policy, do not answer the phone unless you know who it is. And oftentimes people are more inclined to answer local calls. And these folks aren't stupid, so they now have our area code, they have our prefix, they will call us. But did you notice oftentimes they won't leave a message? So if you don't answer, they just move on to the next one. Boom, boom, boom. So I would say don't answer unless you know for certain who it is. If it's a legitimate call, they will leave a message, and then you can decide whether you want to turn back, and call them back. And again, quoting a federal agency, the Federal Communication Commission, #1 complaint last year, robocalls and spoofed robocalls, which are pretty much all of them. I think many of them are spoofed. And Kate, what do you think?
Yep. Well, and everybody hates robocalls, and everybody has a different method of trying to deal with them, from just letting it go to voicemail and not answering to we heard from one woman that would answer every call, and when the fraudster started talking, she blew a really loud whistle into the receiver head. It's like, oh no. But there are things that you can do. Yes,
Mhm.
sign up for the do not call registry. That's going to cut down on some calls, because legitimate companies that in the US, this is US based, are going to stop calling you and sending you these calls. So you'll cut down some. Go ahead and block calls as you go. That because it will help. It's not going to solve everything. And again, be skeptical, spoofed calls, let it go to voicemail. There are call blockers that you can use on your device. Some are free, some are fee-based. Check with your phone carrier. There might be some options, either free or for a small monthly charge, that can help block those calls. Software that you can use on your device, such as Umail, RoboKiller. AARP is now working with a company called Nomo Robo that you can use on your cell phone. And they not only help block those calls, they keep track of the calls and where they're from and what they're for. And they share that information with the region that is being targeted at the time. And you have an opportunity, if you want to listen to some examples of these calls, go to aarp.org/tipoffs, and you can get some examples of robocalls. But take some steps to do that. Oh, thank you, Ashley, for adding that website into the chat, so you can make a note of that. It's very interesting to hear, not that we don't all hear robocalls all the time, but just taking some of these steps, I guarantee you're not going to eliminate every robocall. But keep in mind, you can have more than one program on your device at a time. You can have 3. Dave, our cyber expert, says he has 3 on his phone. So he cuts out a lot, but they still get through. So take those steps.
Mhm. And one thing back to the type of robocalls that we get, a lot of study has indicated that people are more likely to respond to negative news than to good news. So if you get a call that tells you you're about to be arrested because you missed jury duty, or somebody who was just arrested on the border in some drug gang and they found your social security card and all of those kinds of things. We are way more likely to respond to that than some years ago when everyone was responding to the general in Nigeria who was going to leave us $2 million. We're kind of all onto the general now. Nobody's is responding to him, but we are responding to it's Social Security, it's Medicare. You know, they find a way to tap into what our fears are, and they claim, well, the police are going to come and arrest us unless we do something. So those are the ones where, oh, people really respond and react to them. So this isn't specifically about the robocall, but I just want to throw this in because I feel like the door's open a bit. And that is, if you get a call from one of these imposter robo people and they are telling you that it's bad news and you're going to be arrested, oftentimes they will ask you to click or call a number or whatever to do something else. And then they're going to ask you to pay. And oftentimes they're going to ask you to pay with a gift card. And that is the point at which you know this is absolute fraud. I promise you, 11 out of 10 times, if you get a call and you are asked to pay with a gift card, it is a scam. Please don't do it. And please be really, really cautious. You know, the problem with the spoofed robocalls, again, these people are really smart. When they spoof a number and they say they're with the police department, it will appear to be the police department's telephone number that's in your caller ID. They will use the name of someone who is actually a captain in the police department. And so there's no way for you to know off the bat, is this legitimate or not? You have to be cautious. Don't believe anything anyone ever tells you. What is it, you know?
Oh, I'm
trust the
sorry. Are
third
you
party.
getting in?
I guess we have company. So, so anyway, I do want to say, just be cautious. It is really annoying. Oh, and one more thing about the do not call registry. If you register with the do not call registry, a legitimate business has 31 days to get your name off their list. They cannot call you and offer any special deals. If they continue to reach out to you, they are a legitimate business, they can be fined. So for the most part, you could trust calls coming into you, if you are on the do not call list, are either scammers or they are calls that are not blocked by do not call. And the ones that can call you are charities. And get ready for next year, because it will also be political parties can call you even if you're on do not call.
Yeah.
And any companies with which you have a relationship. So if you have a Penny's credit card or whatever, you know, Penny's can call you and tell you how, you know, there's a big sale in the men's department this weekend. But that's how it works. Other businesses with which you don't have a relationship cannot call. And even though we're all excited about having, you know, caller ID, it's great if we know the number, but do not be lured into answering the phone unless you know precisely who it is. Let it go to voicemail.
Thank you, Jean. Really appreciate all those tips, and Kay as well. In fact, Jean, I think that you were telepathic, because as you were starting to talk, Leslie had a question about would the IRS ask me to pay with a gift card? And I believe from what you said, that is a resounding no.
Leslie, no. You know, if someone from the IRS is asking for payment with a gift card, I think Leslie has taken a bad turn. She needs to be reported to her supervisor or his supervisor. No.
All right. And another great question. I keep seeing TV commercials about online banking or accessing my bank account on my phone or my app. Is online banking really safe? I don't really trust that it won't get stolen in these days and times. So I'm writing checks to pay my bills. I like the mail more than I do computers.
Oh.
What do you think, guys?
That's a really great question. And you know, that's a question that we get a lot, because I know folks are concerned about online banking. I worked in corporate finance for many years and worked with banks. I can tell you that they have exceedingly spectacularly strict standards to meet the FTC requirements for computer security. They're extremely secure. The other problem, though, is they have a lot of users, us. And so in that regard, I know that in talking with our cyber expert, Dave, who worked in cybersecurity for so many years, he also supported a major bank for many years with their security. And he said they just got inundated with calls about how the bank has been hacked, my account's been stolen. Every single one of those investigations led to the situation where a user, a customer's device, whether it's their phone, their tablet, or their computer, laptop, was infected with malware, infected with a virus that allowed a scammer to monitor their use when they accessed their bank account and got the information and then access their account to drain it. So, online banking, it's kind of like, yes, it's very safe with the banks. It's very convenient for us, but we have to take some responsibility for ourselves. We have to make sure that our computers and our devices have up-to-date virus protection. And even if we don't do online banking, we want that anyway. So, online banking, very safe, strong antivirus uh, systems on your device. If you write checks, we know that one of the most increasing and continually increasing problem, especially in our areas here in Washington, mail theft. Even if you've got a locking mailbox, breaking into the mailboxes and stealing bank statements and checks. So again, you know, keep that in mind. And I can also tell you from being in corporate finance, if you're told to send a check to your healthcare company, for example, you're not sending it to their front door. You're sending it to their bank account, one of many, at a specific address in the bank. And that address denotes their account, so the bank will deposit your check. If you send it to their front door, you know what happens? The people in the front door in the accounting office take a picture of your check and send it electronically to the bank. So they're banking electronically. Well, how confident are you with what they're going to do with your check? Because it's got what? Your name, your address, probably your phone number, your bank account information, your routing number. And so really think of those two options. As long as you've got great antivirus software that's up to date, you're probably much safer banking online than you are sending physical paper checks through the mail. Jean, what do you think?
Oh my gosh, I could almost scream in agreement to it. I was one time on a panel and we were talking about online banking, and this was with the Attorney General. And people were really leery. A lot of times, let's face it, we older people, we've been doing it a certain way, and that feels comfortable. We're confident that's going to work. But the Attorney General said banking online is so much more secure than sending paper checks. And so I just feel like anybody who's involved with law enforcement or with security is aware of that. And I would like to share a couple just little stories about this. One is that what really sold me on it, do you remember there was a TV ad a while ago with this young couple that just got married and they were in the hotel room and they're getting ready to go on a honeymoon. And they were wondering what to do about the inconvenience of all those checks that they'd received for wedding presents. And the ad said, no problem, take out your phone and take a picture, and that way it'll deposit right into your account. And my thought is, what happens to those paper checks? And as you said, when you use the bank as an example, almost everyone that you may send a paper check to is doing online banking. So they are going to scan your check, deposit it, and now they have your physical check, which could put you at increased risk. I looked online to see how much it costs to make your own checks, because I spoke with a woman who was a victim of fraud. It turned out that some scammers had her bank account with the routing number and everything. All the other information on that check was false. It was not her name. It was names of people who had been victims of identity theft. Many people on the same account number. And that said to me, no offense to the banks, but overnight, they are not matching signatures and names with account numbers. It is all happening electronically. Those checks are going through zip, 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 zip. And there will not be any awareness that someone is using your account until you complain. Oh, so back to blank check paper. I can order enough paper to print up 2,500 checks for under $100.
Wow.
And so I think we really need to be cautious with paper checks. Send them from the post office if you're convinced that's the way you want to go. And really be sure to check your account really frequently, because I think you're at increased risk. So please consider online banking.
Well, and I would just add one more thing too. And if you're set on using paper checks, great. But I highly encourage you to go online and open an online account to access your bank account. Even if you never look at it again, set up an ID and a password and multi-factor authentication where they text you a code that you have to enter to get in. Why would you do that if you're sending paper checks? Keep in mind that if your identity is stolen, the fraudster is going to go out and most likely want to open accounts in your name and try to get into all of your accounts to get your information and your money. And so if you haven't protected your online bank account or an investment account, or whatever it might be, by setting up an ID and a password, that fraudster can do that posing as you, because they've stolen your identity and they have that information. Once they do that, of course, they can request checks, they can make withdrawals. So again, paper checks, if that's the way you choose to go, okay. But go ahead and take that extra step online just for the extra protection.
All right, thank you. And we have a follow-up question from Ted. Any comments on the vulnerabilities associated with online banking apps like Venmo, Google Pay, and Zelle? Even my bank wants me to use Zelle.
That's a really good question, Ted. And some of these apps have been around for a while. Some of them are brand new. Seems like there's more and more popping up. The thing to keep in mind is while these may be quite secure, they are not under the same restrictions and monitoring federally or financially as other institutions such as your bank. If your bank is saying use this, I would ask your bank about the security of that application before you dive in, and ask them, so how are they protecting my money transfers back and forth? The other thing to keep in mind, especially like PayPal or Venmo, it's really hard to get your money back. If you buy something and there's a dispute, if you use your credit card, you just say it's disputed and they'll just credit your account and all is well. Extremely difficult to get your money back if there's a dispute when using these so convenient payment processors. So Jean, have you had experience with these as well?
I don't have a lot of experience. I have paid a few things using PayPal because it was required of me, if I wanted to place that order. But what I found is ever since doing that, it seems I'm getting a daily message from PayPal. And of course, it's like, I don't think so. But another piece, though, that worries me a lot about this is how secure. You want to be cautious when you're doing these transactions and make sure that that everything is really safe. I would be really cautious with it myself.
Yeah.
And two other things, if I might add them, you guys. One being, going back to the whole password piece about assuring that you have very, very secure passwords. And I've got a follow-up question to that. But the second thing related to Zelle and Venmo and those is that more likely than not, those are associated with a device such as your phone or your iPad. And I've heard Dave talk about the necessity to secure those devices, maybe not just with a secure password, but also with things like facial recognition or thumbprint, because those are unique and cannot be duplicated. So those might be two other ways in which to assure that when you are using financial financial related apps on devices, that you have an extra layer of security. Now, I do want to remind you guys, we only have about 6 minutes left for our designated times. And I'd really appreciate it if you guys, if you want to have questions that you want to put in, and I do see a hands up that I will get to in just a second. But please, get in your questions because we have very little time left. Let me now get back to a question that I know I saw. Ted, was there another question that you had? If not, okay. Pop up your hand if you have a follow-up question there. Let me just add on one about passwords. We talk about having a very, very tight, secure password, but what about password managers?
Well, I know that they are really strongly recommended, and there are many good ones. Again, we refrain for the most part from recommending a particular one, but we can refer folks to a trusted resource, for example, PC Magazine and some of those, rather than recommending specific ones. The nice thing about Password Manager is you then don't need to remember every single password. And I can't tell you how many folks will write it on a little post-it note and pop it on the computer, and then they will use that for all of their accounts. That needs to stop immediately. Really, if you are doing that, you can leave the call now and go fix that, because that's a big problem. But we want to make sure that passwords are secure. Password managers will encrypt a password specifically for that account. You just need to remember what is your password to get into your password manager. And you had mentioned briefly, Anne, about the two-factor authentication, that there would be different things we could do, like thumbprints and retina scanning and all of these. And I think some years ago, we heard that passwords were on their way out and we were all soon going to be scanned, before we could get into our accounts, but that hasn't really happened.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of secure passwords, we have this, it should be 8 figures long. It should be some letters. It should be some numbers and this and that. But what I understand is that even more important, that it's a different one. We're not using a word in the dictionary. We're not using our pet's name, nothing that can be guessed or put together. And the nice thing is, because maybe we are not clever enough to think of the number of passwords we need, password managers will do that for us. And they're very secure. Not 100% foolproof, because nothing is, but pretty secure. How about you, Kay?
Yeah, and that's just to piggyback on that, that's absolutely true. Having strong password is the best first step that we can all take to secure our devices, our computers, our identities. That is the most important first step. And we need to think in terms of, if your password and ID is stolen, because maybe you've used the same one on everything, even if you haven't, if it's stolen, these are so cheap to buy on the dark web. You can buy a password and ID for as little as $1 on the dark web. And you think, well, why would they pick mine to then try to search for an account to get in? It couldn't be that bad, could it? Well, there's actually a thing called a credential stuffer that I love that name, that fraudsters use. And seriously, all they have to do is push a button after they've entered a sheet and scanned up of passwords and IDs, and it literally checks your credentials against thousands of websites. In the off chance that there's going to be a hit, they don't have to do anything. They push a button to run a program. So they know that many times we don't want to go to the trouble of having different passwords on multiple accounts. It's much easier to use the same password, or to have maybe just a couple that we're going to use here and there. And what's the harm? So password managers, really highly recommended. They're going to encrypt your passwords. We do get asked from time to time, well, how safe are the password managers? What about a hacker on the password manager? And it's probably about 10 years ago or so, there was a password manager at the time that was hacked and the information was stolen. But that was 10 years ago. They have an excellent track record. They actually use blockchain technology now to encrypt our passwords, almost unbreakable in terms of blockchain. You know, if we held that up as the circumstance of we're never going to visit that website because 10 years ago they were hacked, we'd probably never visit any websites. So extremely secure and really pretty easy to use. Even if you say you only want to use it for your financial accounts to feel better about those. So really, like Jean said, looked into Wired Magazine, PC World, get some recommendations and see what really suits your needs and what you want to have.
Wow, thank you both, Kay and Jean. We got a lot of great information in answer to the questions that came up, and we certainly want to thank all of you who joined us this afternoon. We'll send you an email later today with a list of fraud prevention resources, plus the 6 steps to freeze your credit.
Oh, good.
And please join us again for more of our Fraud Watch Friday broadcasts. Our next live Q&A, like today, will be at 1 p.m. on July 16th. We also have a free Tip-Offs to Rip-Offs online event on Wednesday, June 30th from 10 to 11:30. Representatives from local agencies will spotlight scams being reported in Wenatchee, Chelan County, and elsewhere in central Washington. We have a number of these events through the summer in different locales. So if you would like to register for this upcoming one on June 30th, go to aarp.org/WA to register. And as we mentioned earlier, you can visit our tip-off site to listen to actual scam calls. That is aarp.org/tip-offs. And it will raise the hair on the back of your neck when you listen to some of these, believe me.
True.
Lastly, if you know of a community group who might benefit from any of our live online Speakers Bureau presentations, topics like brain health, prepared care, fraud and fraud prevention, and I'm afraid I'm forgetting some of them, but if you would like to contact us in regard to those. I think, Ashley, would you mind putting that email address? There we go. It's actually a web address, aarp.org, WA Speakers Hub. And I'll repeat that, aarp.org, WA Speakers Hub. And we'll look forward to seeing you at another of our events upcoming. And thank you again for joining us today. Have a wonderful afternoon and weekend.
Thank you.
Take care. Be safe.